your headset on. Welcome to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are in day one of pool play at the USA Ultimate College Championships. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald, joined by Kurt Gibson, and we have a matchup in the men's pool play division. It is University of Oregon versus University of Georgia. And Kurt, you know a thing or two about Georgia, having been one of your fierce rivals back when you were in college.
Yeah, Georgia back in the old Atlantic Coast region, playing against the likes of guys like Dylan Tennell, Greg Swanson, just some, frankly, outstanding players. Georgia has a pretty solid program where some of the best players from that Georgia team wound up taking Chain Lightning, the club team out of Atlanta in 2009, to a club national championship. You actually see that quite a bit. You know, some of the top college talent, you know, if they stick where they live after college, a lot of times they end up being the top players on their club teams within a couple of years.
And Georgia driving to Milwaukee from Georgia, from Athens, Georgia, 16 hours through the night. So they kept the time with playing the resistance card game in riddles. Now on the Oregon side of the disc, they are making their first college nationals, college championships appearance since a well-known Oregon alum who you know pretty well, Dylan Freechild, was there.
Yeah, Dylan Freechild, fellow world champion on Team USA in 2016.
Ian, I can hear everything you're saying.
He is an outstanding player, a really passionate guy, and, you know, frankly has come to be one of the top players in the country. Unfortunately got hurt at last year's club nationals, but Dylan has made some tremendous plays and is definitely a well-known staple for the Oregon program.
So exciting matchup today. Oregon will be pulling to Georgia to start us off, and the wind is probably around 10 miles an hour so far, but we have seen it play a factor, especially in this downwind end zone and for some swings.
Yeah, the wind has played quite a bit of a factor in the first two games that we saw today that you and I have done together, and it seems to have died down a little bit, but you know what? It's still going to be a crosswind. It's coming from where we're sitting towards the far side of the field, or to Oregon's right now. And so look for both teams to, you know, if they're smart, they're going to keep the disc on the side of the field close to us and where the camera is, and that's going to set them up for much easier dump passes, because as we saw earlier, the dumps have been challenging for the teams today, and so if they can keep the disc in positions where they're not making challenging dump passes. Oh, look, we see one right there. That's going to prevent teams from easy scores.
Right off the bat, Oregon with a break, putting points on the board, and you called it, Kurt. Some pressure from the handler space causing that dump reset to really be challenged.
Yeah, you see it at every level. I mean, no matter what, it's tight dump defense is going to cause turnovers, but it's the teams that have the mental fortitude and the decision-making skills to be able to get the disc to that dump in a tight spot consistently. Those are the teams that honestly are going to end up at the top of these college championships, and frankly, any championship that you're going to participate in. Again, it seems like such a small thing, but I can't stress that enough. If you can make smart decisions on reset passes in the dump space, that's going to make the difference between a team that can win a championship and a team that doesn't even make bracket play.
So starting off the game with a break is Oregon. Plenty of ultimate still to be played, though. And number 25, Leandro marks Albuquerque, the 5'8" junior, to pull for Oregon.
But you see, that is a pass for Georgia that you just don't want to see. In a windy game like this, you don't want to give up the easy goals, right? It's windy. If you're going to give up a turn, give it down towards the other side of the field and make them work.
So Georgia working up, now inside of half field, Taparo with the disc. Putting a lot of spin on that handler reset. Lady up in the air. There's Matthew Cook to Jason Jones. Trying to be patient in the red zone, but that's tipped up in the air. Disc is still live. Second attempt is caught by Adam Reese. However, there's a call on the field.
That's going to get overruled. That was a 50-50 ball. That's going to get overruled as a foul call. Yep.
So Oregon will keep the disc, looking for their second break of the game and second point.
And we saw it again. We've seen it all day. Those backhand dump passes up into the wind. If the bottom of that Frisbee catches too much of the wind, it's just going to pop it straight up. And if you're not throwing, if you don't throw it flat out right at about, you want to throw that dump pass at around, release at your knee level and get it and have it hover right around chest level. Once it gets above there, it can kind of bounce a little bit. And if you release it too low around your ankle, you have to put too much angle on it, and then the wind ends up catching it at some point and just going to end up what it just did right there, pop up straight in the air and make it a 50-50 ball.
So Oregon, Duncan Fitzgerald over to Matthews. Pick called on the field.
So if I'm Georgia here, you see both of them lined up about 2 to 3 yards off their handlers. I would give them that space, let them work backwards like they just did. Let them work backwards, make them throw throws, see if you can steal one here. The wind is picked up right now just in the last 30 seconds or so, and they're not going to be able to throw. Right there, you see that turn. Once they got to throw upfield, it's much more difficult.
Georgia now with another opportunity on offense. There's a high point from Sam Batston.
That is a tough throw, Scoober, into the wind. Probably not the best decision, but it worked out for him.
Taparo to Hodges, and shot over the top. No good, looking for John Langstaff.
Yeah, it's another pass we've seen all day that teams have struggled, is that flick towards that far sideline where the Oregon player is picking up the disc now. If you put too much angle on it, that wind is going to push the top part of the disc straight down, and it's not going to give the receiver any time to get underneath the disc and make a play. Again, if you're Georgia here, do not let, there, easy D.
Tip D, giving him some room. So Georgia in the red zone. Scoober over the top, that's good. There you have Mason Carey with the goal.
That's a crafty throw in the wind, a very, very challenging throw. You don't see too many players throw that type of throw.
So we are tied at ones.
You know, Emmy, this is shaping up to be, the wind has picked up here, and you saw on that point both teams challenged to throw up wind, especially that Georgia offense. And if this wind is gonna remain at this speed the rest of the day, if I'm the coaches on both teams, you've got to tell your handlers, sag off, give them those resets, make them throw a lot of passes, let them get frustrated by not being able to get up those upfield passes, and see if they make some mistakes, because we saw it on both the last points on both sides, just easy dump passes and resets that on a normal day would be very, very easy and simple, but on a day like today, those are going to be challenging. So the name of the game is going to be get them to throw a lot of passes if you're on defense, and absolutely do not get beat up the line. Do not get beat up the line, because that's when they'll get into a power position. They can sneak away a few hucks and potentially turn those into scores, and that's not something that you want to see.
So, wise words, you heard it from Kurt Gibson. Let's see if the teams heed that. Georgia on defense. Oregon waiting about 10 years to catch the pole, but they do. Seither to Clark, inside to Will Laurie. Will Laurie, the younger brother of Ben Laurie from Colorado Mama Bird.
Never heard of him. Ben Laurie's one of the top players in club, just a great player, great defensive player, great offensive player, playing for Johnny Bravo.
And also, I should also say, he's also the younger brother to Lisi Laurie, who is also a phenomenal player out of the Colorado program, too.
So if Will's anything like Lisa and Ben, then he's going to end up being a pretty solid player.
Oregon working the give and go, a little bit of contact. They shake it out. Seither will check back in.
So you see Georgia right now is kind of in a saggy 3-3-1, and what they're doing is just trying to make Oregon throw a lot of throats, which is exactly what they should be trying to do, make them beat them. You see them collapsing on some of those inside passes. The way to beat this zone is going to be through the middle, swing it around, and then kind of shoot it through the gaps. But you see they're very flat. They're letting them throw it across, and I think they're just waiting for Oregon to make a mistake, but so far they've been pretty steady. And there it is. That's down. That disc was down.
So
23 had some speed. He got closer than I thought he was, but again, that.
Let's take a look at the replay. We have the benefit that they don't, but from our replay point of view, it did look down.
I think sitting at 60 yards, I had the best perspective. I knew that was down. But Emmy, right there, again, you made them throw a lot of passes. They got a little antsy. They were thinking, okay, I got an opening here, and they just threw it too far. And that's exactly what Georgia wanted there.
So Georgia working it again. Jason Jones over to Francesco. Nice handler fake from Jones.
A nice throw. Oregon playing tight handler defense. They're fortunately turned it right there.
Intercepted. Seither over to Quizon Tice. Seither looking for the end zone. One-on-one, and Laurie seemed like he went up a little early.
Yeah, he was at the back of the end zone, so one of those, you got to kind of try to reach it higher than you would think, because if you don't get it, then you're just not going to be able to toe that disc in.
So Georgia will have the full 70 yards to work.
But you can tell Will Laurie on that last point before Georgia turned it was playing excellent defense. Excellent defense on Jason Jones there, and you can just tell that you can tell he's the younger brother of Ben Laurie because of just the speed and athleticism that he has. So
there's the huck, tipped out of the way. Oregon will pick back up.
That was a nice throw from Jason Jones, but just a little, wasn't far enough. He got the inside out, was able to connect through the wind.
Laurie with another shot, overthrowing Quizon Tice.
And that was the right angle that he got. It did sit up a little bit, but you've got to throw that just a little bit softer. I mean, his receiver, Xander, was I mean, there was nobody near him. He didn't need to necessarily get it into the end zone and throw a perfect pass in stride. You just got to get him to complete it. So you just got to throw that one higher, same angle, just a little softer touch. And that's just experience there, you know. Those are the throws that you learn to make with experience.
So play called on the field. Gladstone will keep for Georgia. Looks for the reset to Di Francesco. Popping up. Tall receiver, though, in Jones. 6'4". It's behind Gladstone. He catches it. 6'3". Over to Stoll. Jones all over the top to Bennett. Continues on to Kellogg. And Kellogg has the goal for Georgia.
It's a nice sequence there from Georgia. That is almost turning into the upwind direction. The wind seems to be coming a little more off our right shoulder right now. So that's the harder direction to really go in at this point. Earlier in the day, it was a straight crosswind. Now it seems like it's really coming more from our right side, or where Georgia is right now. So
Georgia also taking advantage of some of their height matchups and knowing that these backhands float a little bit. You have 6'3" receivers, 6'4" receivers, but they are missing a 6'5" receiver who's on crutches on the sideline. He broke his leg. Hunter Cutts broke his leg at sectionals and is today.
Yeah, you see him over there on the sideline cheering his team on. It's a tough thing, you know, being injured and not being able to play at the college championships is, it's tough. It's got to be tough, especially considering, you know, just the passion and the excitement of this tournament. Is just, there's really nothing like it in Ultimate. You know, every team is just going down, you know, as hard as they can, playing through to the last point at every game, and it's just such a stellar environment to be in.
So Georgia will take a 1-goal lead. They're 2 to Oregon's 1. Georgia, of course, in the black jerseys to Oregon's traditional green and yellow. And that pull is out of bounds.
I happen to like the bandanas that Georgia has on their heads. They're truly living and breathing the bulldog. They're embracing the bulldog in them by wearing those bandanas.
They are each an embodiment of UGA in themselves. I'm a Texas Longhorn through and through, don't get me wrong, but UGA is super cute, I have to admit. Checking back in, Oregon. Lots of handler movement in the backfield, and that throw is incomplete. So Georgia with an opportunity to break. Ingley picking up the line to carry.
I am really confused at why Oregon is marking backhand right now. That just doesn't seem like a good decision. Now, they did get the turn, so they proved me wrong here. But candidly, you want to get the disc towards the other sideline, make them throw the Frisbee back towards where we are, or their left shoulder right now, if I'm Georgia, because that's where the discs have been popping up all day. So the backhands, the high release backhands, or even just the IO up the line can actually end up being very easy throws depending on where the wind is. And so I'm candidly shocked that Oregon is marking backhand. I would think flick is probably the way to go right now, especially since Georgia showed that they can launch some backhands on that previous upwind point.
Well, Oregon kind of, I'm not going to say they proved you wrong.
They proved me wrong at that point. You can call me out on that one, but I'm still sticking to my guns that flick's going to be the right decision long term here. Georgia hasn't shown that they can throw the flick in the wind.
And Oregon, with the quick passes, Georgia playing kind of a flat sag on the handlers.
But that's exactly what they should be doing. We talked about that at the beginning. Make them throw a lot of passes, sag off, and they've just retreated about almost 20 yards right now. Let's see if Georgia can prevent them from keeping it going other yards. They threw a nice scuba over the top.
And broke open onto the far sideline, Perlman, but resetting back to Seither.
if I'm Georgia, I'm okay with this. This is still good. They're still making them work. They're throwing a lot of passes. They just need to get a little closer to that center guy. Don't let them throw up field there. Got to cut those off.
And Oregon marching up the field. However, travel called. You see a reenactment from Petmeki. I love the always the dramatizations and replays that everyone has on a foul call, on a travel call.
You know, I had one of the players on our team in 2006, the year we won the championship at, I believe it was at regionals. He literally acted out how the guy caught it in the end zone by diving and landing on his elbow first and then feet completely by himself. And so acting and reenacting has always been part of the story within the sport when you're making your own calls.
So Oregon just marches right down the field and they will get the score. You see Will Laurie with 1 foot down, but that was the first point of contact. So observer rules in.
Yep, you only need 1 point of contact to be counted in. Unlike football where you need to get 2 feet inbounds in ultimate, you just need 1, whether it's your hand, elbow, or foot or toe. That first point of contact can be called in.
So we're tied at 2s in this pool play game. Definitely leave a comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We've had people tuning in from all over the world. There was someone from Casablanca, Morocco, tuning in to one of our games so far. And
wow.
All across the US, all across the world, thank you. Make sure if you post about it on Twitter or Instagram, you use our hashtag USAU D1 Champs, and join the conversation. Maybe you over the top to Fitzgerald. Another high release backhand, and that's good. Completed to Colby Chuck.
You see, that is an easier throw, that high release backhand, than this wind. It's going to sit with the wind coming from behind you. That's why earlier I was surprised that Oregon was marking backhand. And then even Georgia there also marking backhand. Maybe there's, some guys out here that they are a little fearful of throwing the flick, but candidly in this wind, it's going to be hard no matter what. So especially going to the Georgia, to where Georgia is lining up right now, going to that side of the field, I think flick is got to be the way to go.
So Colby Chuck, the 5'6" sophomore, with a lot of speed, was pretty quick getting to the end zone for that score.
Yeah, Oregon moved it pretty well that last point. Georgia, again, sagging off the handlers, making them, Oregon, throw quite a bit of passes to score, and, they were able to convert that time. So if Oregon can do that all game, kudos to them. They're going to deserve to win this, right? But we have yet to see teams be consistent at that all day in this type of wind.
So Georgia taking a 1-goal lead in this first half. Game is to 15. Half is to 8. There's the pull. Lots of hang time. Allows most of the squad to kind of set up. The pull does land in, so Oregon will check it on this near sideline. Centers immediately. Swinging over. Tapero, that center handler, lots of give and go with Langstaff. And what a bid! Right out of the air is Connor Matthews.
Georgia just didn't have anything going downfield. They were just dinking and dunking it back and forth to each other, but Oregon actually came down in a flick mark and made it difficult for Georgia. They were trying to break it, but that defender on the break side was just clogging that lane, and Georgia had nowhere to go. There was just not enough movement downfield.
So Oregon with another break opportunity running their end zone set. Not in, but that next continue is in. That's bookends for Connor Matthews.
Again, Georgia marking backhand there. Oregon looked very smooth last point against that backhand force. I got to think that you got to switch to flick if you've got a turnover. Was it just me, or is Oregon doing the gator chomp out there? They're calling it a quack, but that's definitely a gator chomp if I've ever seen it.
Controversial. Both animals with beaks, so it could be easily confused from a duck to a gator.
I don't think the gator has technically a beak. I think
It's
it
like
would
it's
just
a
be
snout.
a big, scary mouth.
A
That
big
if you
scary
get-
mouth is a beak.
If they would not, if they lock their jaw down on it, nobody's getting out.
So we have some on the stream saying yes, gator chomp.
Thank you.
But
Those folks on the stream know, have seen the gators on TV or just have common sense.
So there is a timeout called on the field as Oregon goes up by 2. So if you are Georgia, really now you're on offense, you want to try and take it within 1. What are some of those adjustments that you're making, Kurt?
Well, downfield, they just haven't. The last offensive point, there was no movement downfield. Oregon wasn't doing anything in particular. They weren't poaching. They didn't have to work through anything. But I think they've got to run a set play here to kind of get some of their receivers, in flow. When you are struggling to get movement, you've got to set up a set play. Oregon hasn't done anything, crazy as far as throw junky looks or anything at this point. So I would look to, get one of your top cutters isolated in space and see if you can get him the disc with 20 yards up the field, and then, have a couple cutters isolated in space after that, hopefully giving you some opportunities to work the disc towards the end of the end zone in a couple of passes. But unless they're able to do that, Georgia's got to figure out another way to move the disc against this Oregon D.
So Oregon with the disc to pull. Leandro, Max Albuquerque. Lots of hang time. Leaning right. It will land in bounds. And Georgia taking it from the back. In the vertical stack, there's the huck. Kind of a line drive. Bid attempt from Sam Batson, but it was just falling a little too fast.
Yeah, Jason Jones, you can tell he's got confidence in his throws. He's got good power. He just didn't get enough lift off of that. I mean, that was pretty much goal line to about 2/3 of the way up the field. So that was about 50+ yards. But if you're going to get it to the receiver that deep, he just started out a little too deep, and you got to throw that one earlier to give him a chance.
Oregon back on offense. And another line drive right over the head of the defender and the receiver.
Yet Georgia again marking backhand. That was a good throw. That could have been an easy score for Oregon, but he just threw that a little too hard and a little too low. And, fortunately for Georgia, they got the disc back here. But they've got to get some movement downfield. It doesn't look like they're running any set plays here, If I were Georgia, I'd look to send, maybe the 4 and the 5 in the stack under, clear out. Oh, so they did run a set play here. But unfortunately, he immediately looked him off and tried to get a dump pass off.
So another quick break for Oregon.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. I mean, the thrower there, they ran the 1 and the 2, they flooded them to the sideline, and the 3 came open on lock. But John Langstaff, he immediately after about 2 seconds decided to look at the dump. And I think when you're in that situation, you're running a set play, you have got to you've got to stick with the play at least for that first 5 seconds, 4 or 5 seconds, and not turn to the dump at 2. Because you run that set play, you get something off, you get off the sideline, the most importantly, and then you're in flow. And that's what Georgia's missing right now. They've got to figure out a way to get in flow, get the disc moving downfield, and get some confidence to those receivers. And fortunately, if you're in the throw in that situation, you got to get the disc to the open guy in the middle of the field.
So Oregon taking their biggest lead of the game so far. They have 3, Georgia has 2. Half is at 8. And Georgia really looking for those offensive conversion opportunities to narrow their 3-goal deficit. So the pull is live, floating, floating. It lands out of bounds. Langstaff will take it at center field.
You got to remember, this is a key game here, too. Georgia's the 6th seed in the pool. Oregon's the 3. If Georgia can pull off this win, they can take this pool, and that makes a big, big difference in bracket play here. Georgia's got to find a way to get it together here, maybe get a score so they get back in this game.
Jones on the goal line, shot to the end zone, and they did it.
That
There's
was
Taparo.
That was a risky throw. One might say visionary, but I would say pretty risky, because if that defender just took a look around, he could have snatched that one right out of the air. Jason didn't give enough space, in my opinion, to his receiver. Probably threw it a little outside so his receiver could use more of his legs to get it. He just had to essentially stand there and pretend that disc was not thrown.
So Taparo, with good hands and a good read to get the score, brings Georgia's deficit within 2. And we have someone tuning in from Rwanda.
Rwanda, wow.
All the way from Rwanda.
Wow.
They play pickup over there, and I'm sure it's amazing. I mean, it's so cheesy, the power of the internet, but to be able to have the game of Ultimate even streamed
That's exciting.
across the globe.
That's exciting. So we've got 2 different spots in Africa. We've got Northwest and Casablanca, and then now we've got South Central Africa and Rwanda. I wonder where else we've got people tuning in from.
I know.
I wonder if we can run a contest for who is the farthest away from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Exactly.
Maybe you can send them a Frisbee if they end up being the farthest, Emmy.
I will defer that to our illustrious USAU friends, but
Did we just sign them up or something?
but
They're probably not going to be happy about that.
back on the field is Oregon, and a junk zone look here thrown by Georgia. Scyther to Clark.
Georgia was running essentially a kind of a 3-man wall, a 3-3-1, and on a sideline looking to trap, but Drew DiFrancesco, they got a freshman run in the middle right there. Just let the guy right through the middle. You have got to stop the middle. That is where the key openings are going to flow, and if Oregon can break it through the middle, then they're going to be off to the races like they were, and they keep breaking it right now. You've got to find a way to block that off and make them throw side to side.
And Oregon in the red zone. Quizon Tice. Now Clark. Scyther trying to stay patient to Reese. And a foul is called.
Oregon looked very confident there. This is probably going to be a score. Looked like a strip, but if I'm Georgia, they were running a 3-3-1. The marker was essentially a few yards ahead of the guys to his left and to his right, if you're that center marker. And Oregon was just so smart. There was no real direction of where they were forcing it. And they just kind of kept running handler offenders right up to the side of each of that marker. And Georgia was not collapsing in. And if you don't collapse in, you're not going to be preventing those guys from just dinging and dunking it all the way up the field, which they just did. If I were Georgia, I would have bring those guys a little bit closer, make them kind of try to go around you or go over the top. In this type of win, we've seen a few of those, scoobers come out, which some have been completed, some have been turnovers, but those are probably some opportunities where they could cause a little bit more of a difficult throw than what they've been doing.
And there's the scoober. That's to Noah Stewart, and an Oregon score.
Yeah, wide open receiver in the end zone there for Oregon.
So Oregon now with 3-goal lead, they're 6 to Georgia's 3 first half of play. And we had a question from the audience, Kurt. Will you be attending the WUCC championships coming up this summer?
I will be attending. I will be in Cincinnati, Ohio in July. I will be playing with double wide. So I lived in Texas for about 7 years after college, and I, excuse me, I will be playing with my old team, double wide, where they invited me to play as part of their, add-on roster for WCC. So I'm pretty excited. I was down there last weekend for minicamp. I'll be going down again in a couple weeks, leading up to the tournament. So I'm excited. It's a fun tournament, the World Club Championships, just such really a smattering of teams from all over the world, and it's just really cool to see the different, cultures that are represented there.
And the playing styles are really interesting too, every team has its own unique playing style, but when you go country to country, you see that even more. Back on the field, Georgia looking to complete under, but instead, there's Colby Chuck. He'll pick up for Oregon.
Yeah, that was just a poor decision from Jason. He just threw it right into that poach right there. Again, Georgia marking backhand, and Oregon looks to be easily taking advantage of this.
Swinging around, Petrus.
Now they're on.
Coleman.
Now they moved to flick, and they got the turn there. Nice job by Georgia adjusting there. They switched to flick, and see they got that pop up on the flick. I mean, that's what they should have been doing from the beginning here. And that was a look that, again, I would have taken. You had that's okay. John Langstaff, he had a wide open receiver. Now, if he didn't take it, he was on the goal line. If you're Georgia, I would have tried to sneak in a huck here to a receiver that had steps on his guy and make Oregon work the full field. They ended up doing that anyways, but at least give yourself a better chance for the goal there. So now we see Georgia in flick.
Oregon. Couple passes under, now going deep. If it stays in bounds, that's a goal. It will. There's Carrie Aithley with the score.
You know what, that it looked like a forced middle there at the end, because when they caught it on the side and they over pursued and sat on that inside pass, which again, I just don't see. Oregon has been just working it so well up that backhand side. Stick with the flick up and down the field. They've shown they haven't had as much success doing that. They turned it over right there, but unfortunately Georgia gave it back.
So Georgia now with a 4-goal lead in the first half. And you can see kind of walking out of our screen is Will Laurie. Question for you, Kurt. Do you know why the 3 Lauries we've mentioned, why they all wear the number 42?
I knew you were going to ask me a question that I didn't know the answer to, so you could tell me. So,
yes.
Emmy, why don't you enlighten us, please? And then I'm going to ask you a really hard question afterwards.
So, their dad is an Ultimate player, and we've talked about USA Ultimate's 50th anniversary. He's been playing for not 50 years, but a good part of 30 to 40 years. His number is 42 as a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So as part of tribute, the three Lories so far have been in college and played club. They all wear number 42, except if two Lories are on the same team, then
Does the other wear 24?
that is a good question.
I don't know the answer to that one. I wasn't trying to stump you. Jeez, well, thanks for asking me a question I didn't know about the Lories. Mrs. Laurie is going to be very upset with me.
She, in fact, is the one who told me about that. One of the nicest people
She
you'll
is
ever meet.
extremely nice, yeah. Very, very, very nice lady. Hopefully she's not watching and doesn't know that.
I think I saw her on site earlier, so she'll probably watch the replay, but you're good for now. Back on the field, flick up in the air, intercepted. And another quick break for Oregon. That's Chuck.
I think you got to take a playbook here. If you're the Georgia coach, take something out of the playbook here. Oregon is forcing Georgia flick, and they are turning it over. I mean, Georgia doesn't really have much going on right now, but they haven't put together a string of passes in a while now, and that's got to be pretty frustrating for some of the Georgia players right now. You can tell their heads are down. You know, they've got to take a halftime right now and really, you know, figure out what they're going to do to take it to Oregon here in the second half, because they haven't done much right outside of the first couple points of this game.
So Oregon will take half at 8 to Georgia's 3, and we will take a quick break, but when we return, we will have the second half of play. We are currently in day 1 of pool play here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the USA Ultimate College Championships. Pool play started today, it continues till tomorrow, then bracket play will start in the last round tomorrow, continuing on into Sunday with finals on Monday. But stick with us here, we have more Ultimate coming up soon. You're watching USA Ultimate College Championships, presented by Fulcrum Media. Welcome back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We are at halftime, where the second half is about to be underway in the men's pool play game of Oregon Ego 8 to Georgia Jojah 3. And this first half, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald with Kurt Gibson. And Kurt, Oregon really taking a commanding presence this first half.
Yeah, they've done pretty much everything right. Georgia has just not been able to put together a string of offense since the very beginning of this game. Unless Georgia, is coming out at half here with a different game plan, I'd see Oregon probably going to run away with it again. So if I'm Georgia here, I'm forcing flick. I'm going to sag off the handlers a little bit, make them throw a lot of passes, and then if it gets to a higher stall count, move around on the mark, make them throw some inside-out flicks. That is a tough throw in the wind.
So Georgia taking the disc.
Looks like they are coming out like.
And low release, but caught.
Too far off the handler, a little too far.
Another layout, caught. Lori with the disc.
There's the turn.
And that force flick seemed to be working well. Georgia immediately taking a shot to the end zone.
Oof, that was a really red play. Not an easy. Definitely, John Rohrbach, a freshman, definitely just didn't make the right play there. Went up way too early. Should have just ran that one out.
So Oregon with another opportunity on offense, looking for the end zone.
Oof, there's Rohrbach again. He's got to get close to his guy there. Let him get a little bit too far. Nice string of throws from Oregon right there. They were marking flick, but they were able to throw some inside throws that, zipping right down the center of the field. And Georgia just, I think, probably a little upset at turning it back over after they had that opportunity right out of half. Didn't play tight defense there.
So with the call on the field, everyone has to go back to where they were. Lori will check in. Finds the reset. Oregon in their end zone look. And a little quick dish. That's Quizon Tice to score. And a lot of patience from Oregon.
Yeah, they've just shown a lot of grit really here. I mean, Georgia just making mistakes and Oregon's taking advantage of it. I mean, they're not doing anything out of the ordinary here. They're just playing solid Frisbee. And Georgia's just, they're almost giving it to them here. It's kind of, I think of the old, Georgia teams of the past when I used to play with guys like Dylan Tennell, Greg Swanson. They some big athletes down the field, some great throwers that weren't afraid to air it out and take some risks. And with Georgia here, I see a lot of tentativeness, right? They don't seem too confident, with this win and going against, Oregon. And some of those players from, the early mid-2000s, they were dominant in club as well, and just outstanding athletes. And so they've got a great program here, but they just seem right now to be a little out of sync right now. Oregon is just playing extremely well. And you kind of see the, Dylan Freechild, the program of Oregon, they have a very similar style right now. It almost seems like it's a style that Dylan Freechild has kind of instilled, with Oregon, because they move the disc very quickly, quick handler movements. They got a lot of short, quick guys, and move the disc very well, which Dylan is extremely well known for.
And some miscues in the Georgia backfield, exactly that gave Oregon some quick conversion. That was Carrie Athey with the score.
Yeah, it's funny. We used to back when I was in college. We used to talk about how we used to see Texas, especially guys like Stephen Presley, franchise, his was his nickname. They played youth ultimate, so they were much more experienced throwers than some of the guys on the East Coast. And so, but we'd always harp on, not throwing West Coast style because, they would throw with air bounces and nice, pretty throws. They look good, but we would joke that some of the throws that we would have on Florida, they didn't look very good, but they got the job done, right? We completed them, we got the job done, and but you see it from Oregon here. They're being very effective. They're looking sharp and crisp, and everything that they're doing is working right now.
So we did want to give an alert in the women's division, an upset alert, that Texas has upset California San Diego. They beat them 15-9 in pool play. So there are lots of exciting games happening throughout the tournament so far. Oregon on defense. Georgia working it underneath. There's the hammer up overhead. One-handed hammer catch, but that still converts. Matthew Cook with the goal.
I'm shocked that Matthew Cook went up there, clearly showing that he's a freshman, going up with one hand and not trying to secure that catch. Being down 10-3 and going up one-handed with a hammer in the wind is probably as risky a thing as you can do in this sport. So if I'm the coach, I'm over there taking him to the sideline saying, hey, great catch, but next time, let's make sure we're officially, securing that and minimizing the risk of any type of turnover, especially in this type of game.
So a little bit of bantering between Cook and Tapero as Georgia scores their 4th goal of the game. They're down by 6. Trying to get pumped up on the sideline. They said to keep the time in the 16-hour drive from Athens, they had a lot of riddles. They told each other riddles and tried to get them to figure it out. That's a time killer.
Yeah, I don't have much sympathy for them making a 16-hour drive the night before a tournament like this. That doesn't sound like the smartest thing to do, and it looks like it's caused them to come out a little slow here, and slow enough where they're not. I mean, they're 6 points out of the lead right now. They've got to figure out a way to get back in this game.
So there's the pull. It lands out of bounds.
They landed in bounds, but it's just over 20 yards for a net 20-yard. Went high, but oof.
And turnover. So a bonus possession, really, for Georgia.
Yeah, this would be a nice one for them to get within 5, make it interesting, make Oregon think a little bit, but they've got to figure out a way to get it off the sideline. They've not been good at that.
Disc is still live, up in the air.
That might work.
And
wow.
It is caught.
That you don't see every day. Hopefully Georgia can sustain this. Oh.
Popping up again. This time Oregon will come down with it.
You can see the wind has picked up here tremendously because anything that gets popped up is going straight in the air and moving about 20, 30 yards downfield.
And bounced off of his knee brace, it looked like.
Oof.
But then thrown
Georgia here,
away.
pick it up quick, see if he can get a sneak one out. Yeah, he was looking for it. There's no dump right now. Somebody's got to come back.
And a layout near midfield.
That was a great catch. A little egregious fake there.
And another layout, or another sky grab.
Stoppable on the defensive side of the ball for Oregon here. And just a little nonchalant from Georgia on a lot of those throws. I mean, they were just I mean, throwing to receivers who had already stopped their cuts. That it's a difficult place to be in, but when you're reeling, you got to tell your team, hey, when we make those cuts downfield, we got to make hard cuts and run through them, because if you can't give a thrower an opportunity to throw to an open guy and you're cutting your throw off, they're not having much.
And that layout, though, it did not result in a score, is one of the best of the best of the best. Did not look like it was catchable, but he came up with it.
That was a great play. Great play. That was quite an interesting point. I think if there's any point that we've seen today that would be an exciting one to watch, I think that would be as entertaining as any. You don't see every day where it gets popped up twice and go over about 6 to 8 guys' heads before it lands up, before it lands on the same team.
So Georgia now to pull, or Georgia to receive. Georgia picking up near far sideline. Immediate look. Receiver gets tripped up a little bit.
That should not be a foul. He was past, this was past him. And they're gonna wave it off. But it just another, if I'm Georgia, nothing's been working, so a huck like that is as good as any, but just didn't really give his offender a chance. Needs to hang up a little bit more.
Oregon, you can see the low release points from that flick. Trapped on the sideline, miscue. Georgia will get it on the goal line.
Georgia's got to try to do something here. Not turn it over, sneak a score in here. And geez, just not a smart decision. Just showed the bottom of the Frisbee to the wind. Has time and time again all day long just gone right over people's heads. And, that's a place where you've got to be conservative. Take your time. Oregon essentially gifted you something on the goal line.
And now Oregon swinging it across the full width of the field, finds an opening to gain yards, and a greatest attempt, no good.
Oregon did a nice job. There was a turnover there, but Oregon's done a nice job of throwing fakes and making Georgia in their zone and junky looks. This should work here. That's a good throw by Georgia there. But Oregon in general, part of the reason why they've had success here is they've been able to, throw some great fakes. For the young kids at home that are watching, trying to understand, hey, how do I best beat a zone? How do I get the defense to move one direction? How do I get them to move more towards the flick side when I'm really wanting to throw to the backhand side? And, Colby Chuck was doing a great job of there, throwing some nice fakes and really getting Georgia to move and create easier dump passes and really just higher percentage opportunities in general for the Oregon D squad.
So Georgia, with the score there, that is their 5th goal. They will pull to Oregon. And in this second half of play, the 4th of 5 games on our live stream today. I'm Emmy Fitzgerald with Kurt Gibson. Kurt, a college championship winner.
Faced University of Georgia many times. Great program. It's just interesting to see the change in the sport and where it's come. It's just a lot of skill across the board from top to bottom. You think about the world championships that are coming up too. One of the things I've experienced, playing internationally is that, the American teams have historically been, pretty dominant. The Japanese teams, Buzz Bullets, are extremely good. Clapham and Britain has had very, very solid men's program. And, you know, Columbia's coming on strong now with some of the club teams there. They've just had, you know, it's just been quite expansive and interesting to see, you know, and play in some of those tournaments because, you know, while the athleticism is there for a lot of the teams, but, you know, the experience, you know, the speed. You see some of the guys, I remember some guys from the Czech Republic just being extremely fast, right? But I think the difference between what the United States is able to bring versus some of the other teams, other than just a lot more players, but we just have so many different sports that we have the opportunity of playing as kids, right? We've got soccer, we've got football, we've got lacrosse, we've got hockey, we've got, you know, obviously ultimate frisbee, but baseball then too. I mean, there's just so many different sports that involve so many different, you know, qualities within, you know, an athlete's, you know, repertoire, hand-eye coordination. And you look at a sport like ultimate, it just involves so much different types of athleticism, speed, jumping ability, endurance, hand-eye coordination, throwing, right? And you kind of incorporate all of that, right? And a lot of sports have more so of one or the other, but ultimate has, you know, such a balance and dynamic of all of those. And so I think, you know, as a lot of the young American athletes, you know, these college players, they play a lot of sports growing up, they're really able to transition to ultimate a lot more quickly than an international player because they've developed different parts of their, you know, I would say athleticism, right, whether it's hand-eye coordination,
Right.
throwing, that sort of thing, that, you know, really help the American teams transition to ultimate frisbee a lot better than an international team.
A lot of different sports with influences, certainly. And back into play, Georgia right knocking on the goal line, really isolating the handler movement, and the layout keeps it alive. Looking for that continuation. Another scuba in the back of the end zone. That's a Georgia score.
That was a good layout, great layout catch, but, you know, Georgia, they're kind of playing with fire here because both that after he made that layout catch, I mean, there was no dump. There was no reset available to him. So he essentially had to make a tough throw with that scuba. And, you know, that's not always going to be there as an outlet. And we've seen earlier in this game where it hasn't worked out for them. So I think Georgia's got to figure out a way to kind of get their players a little set up a little bit better overall so that they don't put themselves in situations where they've got to throw those difficult throws.
And Sam Batson really heads up between that layout and then the scuba following it. So that will score Georgia's 6th goal. Oregon with 12. It's a game to 15. And certainly possible for Georgia to go on a couple runs, but Oregon can't really score in order for Georgia to really win the game at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon is just, they haven't done anything wrong. I mean, everything they've done has been very, very, very good. Defensively, they've been solid. Offensively, they've been solid. Defensive offense has been solid. You know, they haven't done anything outstanding, but Georgia's just been giving it to them, which is a shame because they're a better team than this. But, you know, Oregon's pressure, their tight dump defense, and then just their efficiency on offense has just been outstanding. I mean, look at that.
Quizon Tice with his 3rd goal of the game. Even his running form, a little reminiscent of the Spikezilla himself.
Yeah. Almost, I can see Dylan in some of these players out here. Just run around, they're fiery, they're excited, you know, they get pumped up. Pretty exciting to see.
Oregon now with 13. Georgia 6.
Doesn't number 14 look like Dylan?
Number 14. He kind of does, actually. I was about to laugh at you hysterically, but I take it back. No, he does.
Kind of does. I think we got a Dylan Freechild doppelganger.
He's a
On
little
the current
taller,
Oregon team.
I think, but yes. We are referring to Mike Fielden. Viewers, let us know. What do you think? From this angle, okay, once he turns around, maybe not as much, but I think doppelganger is accurate, though.
Have we figured out who the farthest person away is watching?
So we had one post of someone tuning in from Antarctica, which,
Really?
if they are not trolling us, is pretty phenomenal.
Did we request them to show a screenshot of their GPS on their phone?
That might be a bit of a privacy concern to share publicly, but regardless, it's really neat to see all over the U.S. too, tuning in from North Carolina, from my home state of Texas, your most recent state before Chicago, for Illinois, I should say, and Georgia working it up. Jones literally pointing to where he wants his teammate to go. Shot up into the end zone.
Great D.
Intercepted. Marks Albuquerque.
It's Colby Chuck. Georgia just not making smart decisions. Oregon is just running furiously out there. They just look like they're in great shape. They're excited to be out there, and they are running hard, and Georgia just cannot keep with them. I mean, this is what you kind of call a clinic here, because Oregon's doing everything right, and Georgia can't put anything together here.
Christopher Tyler.
This is almost like was almost like the first 4 games of the Rockets Warriors series, where each game was essentially a, the other team. One team couldn't do anything right, and the other team was on fire. And Oregon is looking really, really good here. And candidly, if they can put together a performance like this for the rest of the tournament, they're going to find themselves in a great, great position. They're certainly going to find themselves in the semifinals, and likely with a shot to take home a title.
So handler miscue does give Georgia back the disc on the goal line. Pick called, though. So Georgia will reset. Disc back in live. Looking for the handler dump. Instead, backhand to the end zone. That's a goal. There's Matthew Cook.
Oregon is, candidly, they've always been known to have, great throwers on their team. I mean, you look in the most recent years, you got, Dylan Freechild, great thrower, crafty thrower. Maybe crafty might be the best way. Very solid throwers, but crafty as well. Excuse me. Eli Friedman, Eli Janin. And then before them, you had the Wiggins brothers, Seth Wiggins, Ben Wiggins, won the Callahan back in the early 2000s. Just outstanding throwers, and just Oregon's been a storied program within the college ranks for a number of years. They first won their first national championship. Gosh, I think it was back in 2000 and was it 2000 and remind me, Emmy. Oh, excuse me, 1992 won their first men's championship. Then they had quite a few teams in the early 2000s where they did lose to Wisconsin in the finals, when Ben won the Callahan, and then obviously are looking for another title. But I think they've got as good an opportunity as any to take home a title this year.
So Georgia is pulling to Oregon. That lands in bounds. resets center field, or middle of the field, increasing, gaining yards. And batted down, away, out of the scoring opportunity.
It's a great D. Poorly thrown, but let's see if Georgia can do anything. They haven't shown all day that they can do anything. In fact, that was just confusion right there.
And Oregon.
A little frustrating to see. You had the number 5 cutter there open on the 4 side, and then not sure who that was. I believe it was Jared Bennett, the freshman, just went from the 1, cut down the 4 side, and just completely cut off what I believe it was Ethan Bowling that came off the back and just, essentially made it impossible for them to make a cut.
So lots of turnovers, back and forth. Wind definitely playing a factor, gusty. And on the run, there's Laurie with the score.
You see what Oregon did there is just a classic cut where the dump lines up on the 4 side, and it's a flick mark, and he just essentially sprints right behind him. You'll watch here, right on here on the replay. He just turns around, flips it to him, his defender's behind him, and then he's able to get an easy break pass off right to the goal line. That is just kind of a classic move that you'll see a smart dump defender do, and that's what you'll see it happen is usually in the lane they can usually get ahead of the defender and get into that space to take advantage of that easy break mark space. So great heads up play by Oregon there.
So here's a look at who Kurt you were saying was the Dylan Freechild doppelganger.
Tell me I'm wrong. He's got the eye black streaked all the way down the face, which is a signature Dylan Freechild look.
And kind of similar facial bone structure. Don't look up too close though. Look at it maybe with a little bit of a squint.
They kind of move around a lot. They kind of seem jittery. 14's been running around on the sidelines like he's had too much caffeine. So a lot of similarities in their body movements.
And I don't know if everybody tuning in the live stream agrees, but it is amusing to watch for sure. Georgia right away looking at the end zone, out the back, will hit the back fence. And Oregon with the disc. If they score here, they will win this game. The disc is up in the air, but it's caught. Oregon answering with a huck of their own. One-on-one.
That is a great box out, I think, by 22.
That's Lucas Ambrose.
That should not be a foul. That is not going to get held up. Yep. He called it back. That was a great throw by Colby to a streaking offender, and Georgia, I think, just wanted to end this game. It didn't look like they really wanted to be in this game anymore and just really save it for the next couple games.
There are a lot of games, since this is pool play, far from over. I should also mention, Kurt, that Ben Wiggins said, he commented, "Where do you think Dylan learned to put on too much eye black?" You're welcome.
That's right.
Learning from the best.
They're right. Ben, I stand corrected. You're the one that started that. Dylan, I think Dylan just had more of a raptor look, almost kind of with like the 3 fingers streaking it down, but Ben was one of the first to do that, so I stand corrected, Ben.
Well, with that score, Oregon will defeat Georgia 15-7 in this round of pool play. We hope you stick around. The Oregon women are coming up next versus Stanford on the live stream. And we have a special Oregon women's alum coming to join us in the booth that we know nobody will want to miss. But for now, Kurt, thank you so much.
Yeah, that'll be a game, Jesse Schaffner, you don't want to miss. Oregon and Stanford, both storied programs in women's ultimate. That should be a showdown. I mean, I think if you look at some of the past championships, Oregon has won, you know, 3 in the last, 7, 8 years. Stanford won 2 years ago and then had two essential three-peats in the 2000s and late 90s. So that is going to be a great game to watch. So I would say make sure to tune in for that.
Exactly. But for now, for Kurt Gibson, I'm Emmy Fitzgerald. Thanks for watching the U.S. Ultimate College Championships presented by Fulcrum Media.